everybody, and welcome once again to the open mic. I am, of course, your host, Rich Eisen. We've been on a little bit of a sabbatical here for the last 3 weeks, little recharge, and now today I'm back, and I'm really happy to have today's guest because we're going to talk about something, a writers' conference that I have not ever been to that I've wanted to go to. It was supposed to be here in my hometown of Sacramento a few years ago. Thank you, Uncle COVID, for screwing that all up. But it's on this year back here in California, in San Diego. I'm thrilled to have the chair of the host committee, who has been working her fanny off to get this thing together for the last 3 years. And also, by the way, she happens to be an outstanding short story writer, aspiring novelist, as all of us are, I think. Kim Keeline, how are you doing this morning, Kim?
I'm doing well, considering we're less than a week away from the big event.
Wow. Well, I've put on big events before. I don't think anything quite like what you've done, but I can share that sense of anticipation and excitement and the desire for it to be over. How are you doing? How are you holding up with all of the stuff that comes with putting on a massive event like this?
Well, it's the biggest event I've ever been involved in, and being in charge of it is a lot. And there's a lot of last minute details I'm going through. So it's like every minute's just 20 things coming at me. So I'm glad to actually sit down and be able to talk to you and just like, whew, I can't check my email right now. It's good. It's all good.
Well, good. And while folks may or may not know about Bouchercon, I assume my audience does. But if you're not familiar with Bouchercon, it is the largest conference of its kind. It is aimed directly at mystery fans, and it's a conference for fans specifically. But there's going to be a lot of great writers there. There's going to be a lot of great panels. Let's start with some basics, though. What are the numbers in terms of how many people do you expect to be there for this event?
So we're at about 1750. It's one of the largest
That is a big one.
that we've had, certainly since COVID, of course, because we've only had one since COVID, and it was smaller than this one. So biggest one in a while, and one of the biggest. And it's 5 days of events. We're pretty much going from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. with things happening. We've got 125 panels, which 5 to 6 people per panel. So it's a lot of authors. Every author is on a panel that we could get on. Obviously, a few slip through the cracks or just don't fit, or signed up too late, which happens. I get people going, I'm sorry, I just signed up. And I'm like, yeah, I'll let you know if something happens that opens up a space. There's a lot of panels that I had to fill.
Yeah, 125 is significant.
Yeah, and there's 6 rooms going at a time. Plus, there's usually author spotlights happening opposite that as well.
Yeah, I've been at big conferences before, not this particular one, but there's always a hub of activity. And if any open mic fans are out there that are going to be at Bouchercon, I'm on a panel at around noon on Thursday. So please say hi if you see me. And if you haven't already signed up for Bouchercon 2023, I'm really sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but it's too late, right? Because you're completely sold out, right?
Yeah, we're not having any open registrations. There's no walk-ins. I'm sorry, guys. But Nashville is already taking early registration. It's the cheapest price you can get to get a Nashville registration. So this is the time to sign up, because it'll go up in price right after our Bouchercon closes. So this is the early bird. Yeah, so it's Nashville, and then New Orleans, then Calgary, and we're voting on whether it'll be Washington, D.C. during San Diego.
Oh.
So those are the years coming up. It will not be on the West Coast again for at least several years, because you can see that it's all being scheduled on the other side, which is pretty common. We don't get a lot of California ones. When 2020 in Sacramento got canceled, it was a few months after that I got the call, we don't have something scheduled for 2023 yet, and we're thinking we should go back to California because the 2020 didn't happen, and we started planning. So
So three
hoping that
years.
COVID would be over. And
3 years
luckily,
this has been in the works, right?
yes, it has been 3 years, and a couple months at this point. So obviously the last year has been particularly busy, and
Right.
it's all volunteer work. Every person who's working on Bouchercon is a volunteer. It's by fans for fans.
Well, and share some of the highlights. We just talked about the panels. There's going to be, 125 panels, a lot of author spotlights. Who are some of the names that attendees can expect to see, whether they're, just doing a spotlight or wandering the halls on their way to their own panels?
Well, obviously, we've got our guests of honor, which I'm just so thrilled that we have such a strong list of guest of honors. So we have David Baldacci, Anne Cleves, Jacqueline Winspear, CJ Box, Kate Carlisle, of course, our Toastmaster Naomi Hirahara. She's fabulous, and I'm so looking forward to seeing her next week. And of course, our blogger, our fan guest of honor, Joanne Love. Don't think I missed anyone there. And then you've got a lot of other people. So, I mean, it depends on what sort of mystery, suspense, thriller, true crime, all those genres, noir, all the different types of stories. We'll have people there, and we'll have very big names there. So, if you like Laurie R. King, she'll be there. Ellen Byron. I'm just trying to think of all the names. There's so many.
Well, I think Rich Zarodnik's going to be there. He just won an award at Killer Nashville. Jim Latoile
Yeah.
just won the Silver Falchion
Yes.
award at Killer
They'll
Nashville.
definitely be there.
There's just so many great authors. It's hard to keep track of everyone that's going to be there. But I think the bottom line is there's something there for everybody
Yes.
as a
And
fan.
that's part of what we're really trying to do. I do have a little bit of extra programming for cozies because I'm a big fan of cozies myself, and they don't always get the attention that they deserve at Bouchercon. So I sort of made sure of that. So we've got our Cozy and Cocktails hosted by Ellen Byron on Wednesday night. We've got some cozy author spotlights that are getting highlighted. I also was highlighting some California authors in some spotlights. Our own local author, Matt Coyle, of course, will be one of those who will be presenting lots of fun stuff. We've got, of course, the Noir at the Bar, where authors read short stories. We have a wonderful underrepresented voices reception so that people can be exposed to authors that they may not have been reading already from different communities. There's just so much. I've got professional actors who are coming to read short stories, both classic and new, on
Oh, that's
Wednesday
awesome.
night. They do that locally. It's a group called Write Out Loud. They do short story readers theater, and they're fabulous. Of course, the Anthony Awards will be on Saturday night, and that will be very big. We've got some great people up nominated for those awards, and we're looking forward to celebrating with them.
Well, I think the bottom line there again is just all day, every day for 5 days. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about it. Like I say, I haven't been to this particular conference before. I've been to many conferences over the years, and one of the things I think that's really interesting to me about Bouchercon, and I felt the same about Left Coast Crime, which I also went to my first one of those this year.
Mm.
Fan conferences are very different from writers conferences where there's a lot of agents and editors. So someone that's attending and looking to connect with an agent or editor, this is probably not, I mean, it's not that it couldn't happen, but that's not the focus here. And one of the things that I found at Left Coast earlier this year was it's so much more relaxed of an environment, and it's such a fan-friendly environment. And I mean, let's be real. When the agents and the editors are there, it changes the vibe. It's like a singles bar on a Friday night in New York City or something, right? Something like this, you can just relax and you see that author that whose work you admire, and you can sit down, if they have a free moment, you can just I walked away with a lot of friends, actually, which I was how well do you know somebody? But yes, I walked away feeling like I'd made a lot of new friends at the conference, and that's what I'm really looking forward to with Bouchercon. So if you don't mind, share a little bit of I guess what goes into that as a fan conference that's different from those other conferences like I was just talking about.
Yeah, and I do think that although writers can meet up with agents and editors there, and there will be, you know, a lot of them there. And we do have an agents and editors panel and an industry roundtable so that people can go and ask questions. But it's not one where we have organized pitch sessions or any of that.
Right.
It's really more about you get to meet great writers, get books signed, have opportunities to talk. And for writers, well, we're readers too, so we're fans, and we get to meet people. But we also get to make friends with people who are doing the same things as we do. I get very excited because I do make new friends, and get to meet a lot of writers who I've been reading, get introduced to writers who now I want to read. Um, I mean, I started reading Sujata Massi's books because I met her at a conference and her books sounded amazing. And I burned through the whole series because it was like, wow, these are good. I really like this. So I get to meet authors that I might not have known to read, that I'd somehow missed in the bookstore.
Right.
And now I've met them, I've seen them at a conference, and I went, yeah, I'm putting that on my to read list. And some of them I move up substantially on the to read list and get immediately. As far as planning it, it's just there's so many different things that traditionally happen about Bouchercon, but you can also do new things. And so it was fun coming up with new panel ideas and new entertainment. I mean, we've got a panel that's a smorgasbord that just, you know, try to answer as many questions from different panels as possible. So there's like 21 panels in 50 minutes, I think it's called. We've got an improv panel. We've got a brainstorming mysteries where you can watch writers try to come up with a new story idea in front of you. Um, we've got writers who are going to bring fight scenes that they think are good and fight scenes that they think are bad and read them out loud and talk about what works and doesn't work.
Yeah, I
Uh,
like that. That'll be fun.
so, I mean, just it's fun thinking of ways, and of course we've got two liars panels because those are always popular. And I wanted to like, no, if you miss one, you want to go to the other, where authors tell stories about themselves, but only some of them are true, and you need to decide which are. Uh,
One of the things I love about all this is, writing is such a solitary thing. It
mhm,
really is. And because, at the end of the day, it's your butt in your chair, your keyboard and your fingers and your brain. It's a solitary thing. And yet, we need that interaction.
mhm,
Writers need to have that interaction. It helps foster ideas. It helps, we can get uh, feedback from fellow writers, et cetera, et cetera. There's all these things that come from interaction that are super valuable, but you don't get a lot of it when you're writing. So you have to take the opportunities when they're available to you. And so I'm like I say, that's one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to this. What was the biggest challenge, or what has been the big, because it's not over yet. So what has been the biggest challenge so far for you in putting this together? Has anything come up where you went, oh my God, this is someone, uh, someone help me out here. This has gone crazy on me. What's been the biggest challenge?
well, I certainly hope I'm past my biggest challenge. I hope nothing else happens that's bad. Um, it should be smooth sailing from here, right? Um,
Yes.
But I think the panel programming, because there were so many moving parts, so many authors, I don't know all of them. And some people in the form where they fill out in registration gave me no clues. They didn't give me their website. They didn't give me any ideas of what they write. And I'm looking at their name going, am I supposed to know who you are? Because I don't. And now I have to figure out what panel would be best for you. So I had to do a lot of Googling of people. Some people's names are very difficult because, like, there was one gentleman, sorry to call you out, John Adams, who writes military history. And if you want to write in John Adams military history in Google, you'll find that you don't find the mystery writer right away until you find out he has a middle initial. Then it becomes easier. But it took me a little while. I was like, who are you?
Yeah.
Um, because I don't read military versions of mysteries myself. My dad, I think, does, and lots of people do. It's a popular genre. But because I was the one trying to figure out who he was, I was like, darn, some people are harder to find than others. Um, and then figuring out the right panel for them, it's hard. Some people you're like, okay, that's obvious. Put them in this category. Um, Others you're like, oh, where would you be good? Where would you be happy? What could you
Right.
talk about? That's
Did
hard.
anybody give you any grief about the panels that you were asked that you asked them to be on, or
I
how
had
did
a
that
few
go?
people who asked to be on something else, but luckily not much pushback. I'd say that in the majority, most authors are wonderful to interact with, and they're kind and forgiving, and they understand that I'm struggling with a lot of moving parts, and that I'm doing my best.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's one of those things that I hope um, readers appreciate about writers. And it's certainly been my experience over the last many years that every group, there's always going to be somebody who's a pain in the ass. But for the most part, writers, I think in my experience, that the pain in the ass factor among writers is really low. Most
mhm.
writers tend to be really collegial, really very few writers I've ever known that are not willing to be helpful or like I say, I just think we come out of that lone room and you're so happy to be with people and to be sharing these experiences. And oh, by the way, this industry is really hard. And it's been changing a lot for the last two
Mhm.
decades and getting harder and harder in some ways. The traditional industry, the indie industry maybe is growing and has gained a lot more credibility over the years. So that's one thing that maybe it's getting better. Um, but it's still hard. This is a very difficult industry to maneuver. And so I think that camaraderie with fellow writers is a lot based because we all acknowledge how hard it is. And you got to stick your face into the buzzsaw a lot, and put yourself out there, and it's not easy. And so I think that's a big part of that, why there's a pretty low factor of jerkism when it comes to writers, thank goodness.
Thank
uh,
goodness, yeah.
you know used to be, I was just noticing, talking about how the industry's changed. So I mentioned the indie aspect of the industry now, and that seems to be a
Mhm.
really big part of it. A lot of the really good writers these days are self-publishing or going some form of indie. Do you have an idea how many of the folks here are going to be coming from that perspective?
There's certainly quite a few. I don't have the number. We do not segregate them out in any way. Everyone's on panels together. You could have, a big name with a big traditional publisher on a panel with someone who is self-publishing. Um, it can happen because I'm putting them in there by what they write and what topics I think they can talk about, and I'm not really looking at how is this person publishing.
Mhm.
Because there are so many of all the different things, including big names who, as you said, are going self-publishing because they can,
Mhm.
because they want to have more control, because this particular project was not something they thought a publisher would take up. They want more money from it, whatever. Because we all know that you don't make a lot, even publishing with the big publishers.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, folks, for every Stephen King, or well, that's not mystery, for every Michael Conley,
yes,
there's like 5,000 writers who are making a fraction at this. This is a labor of love. It
right.
really is. I mean, if you're fortunate and you make some profit out of it, that's great. But very few people are going to be able to stop their day job and just
Mhm.
write. That maybe is the goal for everybody, but it's a hard one, real
Yeah,
hard one.
yeah.
Well, let me ask you a few questions about your writing as well. You're
Mhm.
a very talented short story writer, and I know you're working on some novels too. Um, but I would be remiss to let you go without you sharing a little, because Bouchercon has an anthology. You've been in several other anthologies. I know you've got a couple that you're working on. Just really briefly, I know you love mysteries and you write mystery. Tell me a little bit about your own writing and about some of the things you've been in and some of the things you're working on.
Yeah, I've loved mysteries since I got introduced to it with Nancy Drew. Oh, by the way, we are doing a Ghost of Honor for Carolyn Keene and Franklin W. Dixon this year
Oh,
because I do love Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, and I wanted to do some tributes to them. So there'll be programming based around that, which is fun. And San Diego people, there's a free event you can go to at the public library on Saturday morning. Look it up. So it's a lot of fun. But yeah, Nancy Drew, Three Investigators, Trixie Belden. Then I got introduced to Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie. I do love mysteries, historical, cozy, traditional, particularly I read. But strangely enough, my short stories sometimes go a bit beyond that. I'm not quite sure where it comes from. My first short story that was published was in 2020. It was in my local Sisters in Crime anthology, Crossing Borders. And I was very, very pleased that it got chosen for that, and then also ended up a finalist for the Derringers for Best Short Story. I was shocked and still quite pleased by that because I'd never had anything published before. I'd never written a short story before. It was my first one. Um,
wow, that's pretty good for your first time out.
and I didn't think I would be a writer of short stories. I was working on novels. And then, my Sisters in Crime chapter says, oh, we're going to put together an anthology. I went, oh, what the heck? I'll try a short story. Maybe it'll get chosen. Be nice to have something out there published so that, people can see that I can write. Uh, while I'm working on the others. And since then, yeah, I'm getting my sixth one published now,
Wow.
which I'm pleased with. Um, all anthologies so far. I'm hoping to break into magazines eventually. Um, my goals coming up are finish the novel, get into a magazine, get invited to be in an anthology instead of being in the blind submission
Right.
process, because those to me would be the signs of success. So I was like, those are my goals once I start writing again. Because honestly, this last year, it's been all Bouchercon. Volunteer work just took over my life, even cut into my freelance work. So I'm hoping to actually, start earning money and writing again very soon. Um, but yeah, so they end up being a lot less cozy. The one in Crossing Borders is about a woman getting carjacked on the worst day of her life. It is not cozy. It
Right.
is 1 hour of her life, and it is somewhat violent. I have no idea where that came from. That is not what I read. Um, but
Well,
yeah, my most recent one that was published was in the Guppies anthology and Entertainment to Die For, which was in Sisters in Crime LA. And one is about a death doula who helped solve um, a con artist issue. And then the most recent one for LA was, well, actually, I was a Shakespeare professor once upon a time, long time ago. My PhD in that. And so this one is about a person who's doing a Shakespeare play in Griffith Park when it's sabotaged and an actor is severely injured, and the police get it wrong, according to the director of the play. She's like, I don't think that's who did it. Um, so it was fun getting to do Shakespeare in the short story, um, because that was my passion for so long.
Well, you know what? I only have really one other thing I want to ask you about here, and I think it's a good way maybe for us to close this out. You know, the mystery genre has been around for a very long time. And if you step back from it a little bit, you laid out some of the categories earlier, where we're talking about, thrillers and true crime and cozy, but they all revolve around murder. Even the tagline for Bouchercon this year is murder at the marina, right?
Yes.
What is it that pulls us human beings into this genre where we take such pleasure in reading about such a heinous activity? We write it, we read it, we live it. Fans are going to go to this conference and talk to people who write about it. what do you think is the appeal of this so much?
I think it's like roller coasters. We go there to get out that energy in a safe environment. So there's a lot of fear about crime and death and grief and how you deal with it, the grief, the processes of that. By being able to do it in a place where you're safe helps you work through some of those things. Also, a lot of people would say, unless you're reading something like noir, you get justice at the end. The idea that the world can be put right a little bit, even though there's still death, the person who did it is brought to some sort of justice.
Right.
Those are the ones I read. I don't tend to read the ones where there isn't justice, just because I find that too close to what I sometimes see in real life. So I
Right.
like the ones that wrap it up and make it feel like, oh, something got done. Um, the world at least is better. In Agatha Christie, you notice most of the murderers are not nice people. That way we don't have to feel as bad about it. And that is true for a fair number of mysteries because that gives you more people who could have done it because no one liked that person. Um, I do think it lets you work through different things. I tease my husband. I say that when I get my first book published, it's going to have a to my husband. Um, most of my books have a dead husband in it. Sorry, dear, no, no offense. And it's true. I have characters that I'm writing in my cozy and traditional stories that are widows. That's the main character. They have a recently dead or long dead husband. And you know, I have to say it's not because I want to kill my husband, but I think that working through the how does someone get over being in a long-term relationship and then having that person be gone,
Hmm.
something that worries me. I've known him since I was 12.
Oh, wow.
The idea of losing him is horrible. So I
Hmm.
think I work through some of that. How does one move on? How does one grieve? What does that do to a person? Shows up in my stories.
Wow. Well, I said there was one, but I actually have one last thing because you
Okay.
mentioned the Bouchercon Anthology. So, a couple things. We know that there's no walk-ups, so if you're not already registered, when you're watching this, it's too late. You can't go to this year's, look at
Yeah.
next year's. But what you can do, I'm sure, at some point, is to get a copy of the 2023 Bouchercon Murder at the Marina Anthology, correct? Is that when?
Yes.
So will people be able to buy that on at all the usual places, or how's that going to be available?
So it's called Killing Time in San Diego, edited by Holly West. It has 16 short stories that were chosen by blind submission, plus three from guests of honor, Anne Cleves, Naomi Hirahara, and now I'm going to suddenly blank out. Sorry, there are three. CJ Box? I think so.
I think it was
Um,
CJ Box. I think that's what I read.
yeah, yeah. I suddenly blanked. It's a lot going on right now.
Yeah, I can understand.
And it is through Down and Out Books. They definitely have it on their website. It will be through Amazon. It'll probably show up in some stores. It'll certainly be sold at Bouchercon in the book room. Because this is the official launch. We'll be doing that Thursday night at the end of opening ceremonies. So it's going to be a great anthology, I think. It's got a beautiful cover. Holly tells me the stories are great. So
Well, I have read some of the earlier Bouchercon anthologies, and they're top notch. They really are. I know I submitted a story this year that did not get chosen, which was, I'm sure, the right decision. It's funny. I was teasing Holly about it at a dinner we were at in Tucson earlier this year, but I'm looking forward to it. There's
it's hard to get into them. I know my second short story got into the one at Sacramento. I was really looking forward to going to Sacramento Bouchercon because here it was, my second published short story. Um, and I was so thrilled to be there. And I was going to be in it with some very big names who I was a huge fan of. And I was like, yay, I'm in a book with people who's, really big. And we're going to be at a signing together. And then, yeah, COVID and did both Left Coast Crime 2020 that I was chair of, and then Sacramento for Bouchercon. It was not a good year for conferences.
No,
Um,
I'd signed up to volunteer at
mm,
Bouchercon for that year, but oh well, all things are what they are. I mean, you can't do much
yeah.
about them. Kim Keeline, thank you so much for coming on the open mic today, sharing some information about Bouchercon and about your own work. Um, I know how much work you have put into this over the last 3 years. So a big thank you from writers, from fans. I'm gonna self-represent all of those folks, writers and fans and the industry. I'm really looking forward to it. And all I can say is thank you. I'm like I say, I will definitely say hi. I'm sure we're going to run into each other in the hallways many times and if you are going, it's August 30th to September 3rd. If you're not going, and as I've noted, if you're not signed up, you're not going. Look at Nashville for 2024. I think it's going to be in August of 2024. Check that out. Go back, look at some of the earlier Bouchercon anthologies. Check out some of that great work. All of this is done, as Kim noted, by volunteers. It's a labor of love. In a way, it's a great tribute to both the fans and to writers, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, Kim Keeline, thank you very much for coming on the open mic. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was great talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yep, absolutely. So, well, I'm going to leave you with the same thing I always leave folks with. Couple things. We are available, of course, as a podcast on all of the usual podcast platforms. This video that we're making right now is also available on the Open Mic Writers in Their Own Words YouTube channel. So whichever one suits you best. Be kind, share the information with a friend. That would be great, because that is how most artistic endeavors get an audience, is somebody tells somebody else about them. I would really appreciate that if you would, subscribe. That'd be really great. Leave me a great review. That'd be even better. All those things help people find the show. So thank you very much for anyone who does that. And then the very last thing that I always leave people with, tomorrow it is not promised to any of us. So please make the day count. I am Rich Eisen. For my great guest, Kim Keeline, this has been the Open Mic Writers in Their Own Words. Take care.